Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I like to carry on from the British government's threats to walk out of Brexit talks this summer and discuss how this could become an almost inevitable reality based on an interesting point made by the Financial Times. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, any negotiation is essentially a game of bluff, where each side wants to get more than the other side would like to give, and the higher the stakes, of course, the greater the risk you may be prepared to take. And in any game of bluff, the winner tends to be the party that fulfills one or both of the two conditions. One, they can work out the other side better than the other side can work them out. Or two, they have the least to lose by walking away with no deal at all. So I'll tackle the second one first, as Brexit supporters still insist that this is working in the UK's favour. So the EU is worth about half of our trade, a little under in the most recent figures. Of course, that is not to say that no deal means that half of our trade is suddenly on worse terms, because the other half has also not been negotiated, so that is definitely on worse terms regardless of what we arrange with the EU. Leaving the transition period doesn't just mean frictionless trade with the EU is lost, but also strong trading terms with countries outside the bloc as well. With the EU, on the other hand, not getting a good deal with the UK risks about 6% of their trade, and they have not abandoned trade arrangements with the rest of the world, the other 94%. So the idea that the UK has less to lose is utterly preposterous. And if those in charge of the negotiations on the British side are as dumb as the people who believe that, then we are going to look bloody stupid in 10 months' time, if not sooner. So it's really about the first one. Which party is the better mind reader? Now, the problem here, highlighted by the Financial Times, I hadn't really thought about this, I have to say, is that people in the EU are no longer routinely bumping into people from the UK. This used to happen when we were members of the EU, because of course people would bump into each other in Brussels, Strasbourg and so on, and people would talk and get a good insight into the perspective of the other side. And that is no longer the case. So there is no way for those in the EU now to really understand what the British government is actually thinking. Again, Brexit supporters may see this as a benefit. It means they can't work us out as easily. That's to be what they think. And yes, that's logical, yes. But it also means they won't be able to offer any compromises, or at least it would be much, much more difficult. The problem we have with these negotiations is political, not so much economic. If Brexit was an economic problem, then we'd never have left, because it was in neither side's economic interest to do so. It's political because the EU needs the EU to be strong, which by extension means that any member leaving the EU has to fare more poorly than they did as members. From Britain's point of view, it has to be seen to be doing better outside of the EU than it did as a member. So you have a classic mutually exclusive set of aims on both sides, utterly insoluble in any field other than politics. But because this is a political problem, there is always a solution. You just need something that allows both sides to claim victory to their own people. This happens all the time because most actual people in public never really understand the implications of any international trade agreement. What you need is a deal that allows the UK to claim that it's making its own rules, which it did as a member anyway, so that shouldn't be too difficult really, but aligns itself with some common standards to allow the EU to claim a win as well. The UK economy will do less well outside of the EU either way because, well, that's just how the economy goes with Conservative governments. But they are also very adept at telling the British public how well the economy is doing even when the arse has fallen out of it. So with willing on both sides, there could absolutely be a deal that appeals to both sides. The problem is at the moment, no communication. Boris Johnson and his officials are of no use because they keep talking rubbish. What's needed are genuine go-betweens to explain what each side really needs. That doesn't go through public channels, all very much off the record, and then coming up with some way of finding a common position that means that each side can tell their supporters that they've won everything that they wanted. But because they now only have Boris Johnson's words to go on, and he is saying that he'll accept no alignment with the EU and will cancel trade talks this summer if that position isn't accepted by the EU, which is of course impossible to accept for the EU, then That means the EU have no other option but to conclude that the talks will end without agreement this summer. And they will have to prepare accordingly. So if Boris Johnson is bluffing about that, his bluff, ironically, will be called because it's believed. Boris Johnson will have to cancel the trade talks because to not do so will make him look weak and foolish in the eyes of his supporters. The EU will have to accept that position because, well, if there's any hint of a compromise that Boris Johnson will accept, nobody's telling them about it. So without any informal go-betweens, you basically just have two sides with that mutually exclusive position, those mutually exclusive demands, and no way to reconcile them. So where would that leave us? Well, if one side backs down, it would be terminally damaging to them. So that can't happen. So what will probably happen from the EU's point of view, they will think to themselves, right, we've got 6 months and then they're going to leave the transition period. So we'll have 6 months of knowing it's definitely going to be a no-deal Brexit. Then we'll just have to wait a year or two for the UK economy to collapse, for the blame to be laid at the feet of Brexit and not some other external issues, and then for the British government to come back to the negotiating table and start to take it seriously. From the British government's point of view, that's not what the outcome they will want to see. Because that will mean the end of the current British government. It'll be a new British government that has to go back there. The problem they have at the moment is their supporters think we will do fine without a deal outside of the transition period. So I honestly don't even think what the British position will be after that point. We'll just have to wait and see. But it does look at the moment not just like no deal Brexit is inevitable, because that has seemed almost inevitable for some time, but that the talks will actually end this summer as well. It seems again almost inevitable. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, and if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.